Welcome to SplitSecond. If you want to buy the best sleeves or other magic-related accessories, head down to Dragon Shield using the affiliate link below.
This week we bring you commanders from the new set Outlaws of Thunder Junction. We're looking for skilled pilots to join us on new episodes. We revamped our Patreon, and this week Drake, aka Toxicat, took advantage of his new Patreon benefits to get on this episode and show off his own new spicy brew. Would you like to join us for the next game? Check out our Patreon below or ask in our Discord how to shuffle up with the SplitSecond team. Josh is playing Satoru the Infiltrator, a list revolving around free to cast creatures to cantrip and find the combo pieces of the deck, Claws on Curie or Hullbreaker Horror. Bal is playing Rakdos the Muscle, a list from Joe Bass, which aims to find the 3-card combo with his commander with a lot of sacrifice involved. Elder venture outside his comfort zone of Food Chain to try a Combat Matters deck with Felix 5 boots at the helm. Packed with strange creatures, this list tries to exploit what few cEDH decks can, the combat phase. Last but not least, our guest, Drake, brought his take on Vraska the Silencer, a deck packed with removal in order to abuse his opponent's creatures through Vraska's ability, and it can even win with Thoracle without revolving to Praetor's Grasp. Josh is going first, but unfortunately had to mulligan down to 5. He kept a polluted delta and island that allows him to cast Satoru, and from there Phyrexian Marauder just cantrips into something else. Mana Creep for Sunramp and Toxic Deluge to reset the board against some heavy creature based strategies. He sent Swan Song and Dark Ritual to the bottom. Bal mulligan down to 6, having difficulties to find lands in his 24 land deck. Phyrexian Tower has a single land that might just be dropped into that Mox Diamond to get some colored mana going, and his Imperial Seal can be used to get the last card of the combo, as he already has Phyrexian Altar. Jewel Lotus will boost an early Rakdos, and Gurmag Angler is mainly a 1-mana draw 7 card, paired with Rakdos. He sent Unmarked Grave to the bottom. Elder mulliganed once and found a Windswept Teeth, Swamp and Forest for lands. Witchclaw Talisman and Worldly Tutors can help him pivot his game plan, while drawing cards with the One Ring. A Nightfall's Pattern is also somewhat card advantage, similar to Rakdos' effect. Pair this commander and he gets 2 cards per combat. Finally, Drake was also unfortunate to mulligan down to 6, but still found a decent hand, with Verdant Catacombs and City of Traitors for lands, as well as Elder Spirit Guide for an early Vraska. Snuff Out means he pays nothing to remove a creature and just needs to pay the 1 mana for Vraska to get that card on his side of the table. Cut Down is more cheap removal as well as Force of Vigor. He sent to the bottom Autumn's Veil. Ready for the match? Josh starts his turn with a polluted delta and passes. Bal casts a Mox Diamond and discards his Phyrexian Tower. He casts the top deck Ragavan and passes without a land drop. Elder plays a Windswept Teeth and passes. Drake plays a Verdant Catacombs and also passes. In the end step, Josh cracks his delta for a tapped Watery Grave, and with a new round of priority, Drake cracks his Verdant Catacombs for an Underground Mortuary, and sadly surveilling a Besieged the Mirror that he can't cast anytime soon. Elder declines to crack his fetch, not fearing oppos. And we're back to Josh. He plays an island and casts his commander, Satoru the Infiltrator. He passes without casting the Crypt as he has no use for it, and he suspects the need to pay quite some life for his Deluge in the case he wants to kill Rakdos. Bal draws still no lands and goes to combat, attacking Drake with Ragavan hoping to find some dorks. Ragavan triggers, he gets a treasure and exiles Drake's ad nauseam. Well, at least that's one less concern. Bal now casts his Jewel Lotus and casts his commander, Rakdos the Muscle, ending his turn. In the end step, Elder cracks his Windswept Teeth for a tapped Breeding Pool and was hoping to fire his Worldly Tutor, but fears Bal just sacrifices Ragavan to steal the Dark he wanted to search. He gets to his turn, plays his Scalding Tarn and just passes. Drake finds and plays an Urza Saga, entering play and gaining its first chapter. He then exiles Elvish Spirit Guide for green mana and casts his commander, Vraska the Silencer, shipping it to Josh. He gets to his turn and top decks Claws on Curie. Well, he already has Deepwood Legate, which he casts for free, entering play and triggering Satoru to draw a card. However, unfortunately to him, Bal controls no mountains, so the blue Legate can't be cast for free, or else he could go for it through a risky demonic consultation. He plays a Minamo Skull at Water's Edge and attacks Drake with Satoru before passing. Bal gets to his turn and is regretting his life choices of choosing a 24 land deck. He attacks Elder with Ragavan and Josh with a big Flample Rakdos, considering Josh will be the deck to deluge the whole board, and Josh does flash it in as he already has it in hand. Ragavan creates a treasure and exiles an Assassin's Trophy from Elder. In the second main phase, Bal casts an Impulsive Pilfer and proceeds to use Rakdos' ability to sacrifice the Pilferer, triggering Rakdos to exile Elder's top card, hoping to find a land, and creating a treasure through the Pilferer's death trigger. In response to the Rakdos trigger, Elder does crack his Scalding Tarn to not only find the Underground Sea he so much wants, as well as hopefully deprive Bal of 1 land, by thinning the deck. The trigger though exiles a Force of Will, so Bal feels forced to crack a treasure to cast Imperial Seal. It resolves as he mentions he's pondering on Mana Crypt or Ancient Tomb, but eventually finds a Grief to the top and passes. Elder draws, places Swamp and casts Nightfall Spectre, an old standard staple, ready to work again. We're back to Drake. He draws and his Saga gains his second ability. He plays his City of Traitors and just passes, playing Golgari control. Josh draws and is somewhat floating a bit. He casts his Sol Ring and attacks Elder this time, with his menacing 2-3. He then ponders if he should fire the Deluge now, but finds it too preemptive, not to mention Drake is fully untapped and would be able to cash in some treasures through Vraska. Josh passes and Bal gets to his turn. He draws and casts his Grief, evoking it by exiling Gurmag Angler. It resolves, and upon entering he targets Drake, because targeting one of the blue players and revealing no interaction would mean any other deck could attempt to go for it. The sacrifice trigger is put on top and resolves first, triggering Rakdos targeting Elder and then Vraska, to which Drake does pay for it and gets to bring Grief into play under his control as a treasure, retaining its ETB and targeting Josh with it. Josh reveals his hand and Drake takes the Cloudstone Curio, which Josh was waiting for Bal to have a mountain to go off. Elder then exiles the top 4 cards of his deck, and still in response to the Grief's trigger, Drake fires a Vampiric Tutor. He was hoping to get a Culling Ritual, however as he's searching he notices he will lose the card to Elder Spectre. So he just tutors for a Slaughter Pact. This way Elder can have access to removal on an emergency case, and it also sets him back to pay for it. Still in response to Grief, Drake fires a Snuff Out on the single non-black creature in play, Ragavan. Now in response, Bal casts Elder's Noxious Revival on Elder's Scalding Tarn in the graveyard, and from there he sacrifices Ragavan to Rakdos, targeting Elder with a trigger. Vraska also triggers and Drake uses the floating mana to steal that Ragavan as well. Grief finally resolves and Bal wants that Force of Vigor out of there because of his altar in hand. The social stack opens as Bal mentions that allowing Drake to keep the Pier would perhaps force Josh to fire the Consultation for interaction, which would therefore remove one combo piece from Josh's Thoracle line. However, the table feels Pier is the best option and Josh is not willing to be bullied. Tell us in the comments below if you would take the card preventing your win and force others to use interaction and maybe lose the game, or take the Pier. Bal does take Pier, and now plays Elder Scalding Tarn that he cracks to find a Badlands. He then casts Elder Sylvan Library and passes the turn. Elder gets to his turn, plays a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth and attacks Drake, hoping to find something juicy with his Spectre trigger. However, it's just a Slaughter Pact. He then casts the One Ring, gaining protection, and tapping it right away to draw a card before passing. Drake draws and his Urza Saga gains his final ability. In response he activates it to create a construct. He then searches for an Amulet of Vigor and just passes, hoping to get some value out of Josh's Deluge, or Bal's sacrificial shenanigans. Back to Josh. He considers Deluge once again, but instead he casts a Mana Crypt and pays 7 to hardcast Seagate Restoration. The game seems rather slow, so he prefers to refill 4 cards. Other players, knowing of Deluge, also delays their board presence. Elder is not casting creatures he would want, exactly because of that. He finds a Mere Gemstone Caverns and then attacks Bal for 3 before passing. Bal draws 2 extra cards from the library trigger, paying 8 life. He plays a Snow-Covered Swamp and exiles a Simian Spirit Guide to help activate Impulsive Pilferer's and Core ability, creating 3 copy tokens of it. He then sacrifices the one that should attack Drake as an additional cost to cast Culling the Weak, triggering Rakdos and exiling the top card of his library, a Hoarding Birdlord, and still gets a treasure in the process. He is actually capable of casting the Birdlord, but killing it with Saw in Half or sacrificing it to Rakdos would mean Drake would also get a tutor through Vraska's trigger. This way he uses the black mana to cast Phyrexian Altar. He sacrifices one of the copied tokens, generating 1 black mana, creating a treasure and triggering Rakdos, targeting himself. Josh calls out one of his 21 lands, and it is. He sacrifices the last goblin for red mana, creating another treasure and targeting himself with Rakdos' trigger. He finds another land, so he just sadly passes without attacking, having Rakdos to protect his life total for Sylvan Library. Elder untaps and the ring deals 1 damage to him. He also found a Gemstone Caverns, 3 found in this turn cycle. He activates the ring, drawing 2 cards now. He goes to combat and attacks Josh this time, actually hoping to find a counterspell for protection. Instead, he finds a 0-drop. In the second main phase, he casts Mystic Remora and just passes. Drake gets to his turn, draws, and he's still recovering from Grief's turn, so he passes holding interaction. Josh untaps and is safe from the crypt roll. He plays his Scalding Tarn and attacks Bal with Satoru before passing, fully untapped. Bal gets to his turn and pays 8 more life to his Sylvan Library trigger. He is also on the recovery side, so he passes. In the end step though, Elder finally feels safe to cast his Whirly Tutor, since Bal has no more creatures to sacrifice to Rakdos. However, in response, Drake casts an Opposition Agent. In response though, Bal flashes in a Dual Caster Mage, entering play and triggering to copy Elder's Whirly Tutor. It does resolve, so he goes and finds a Mind Slicer to the top of his deck. Josh now cracks his Scalding Tarn to find an Underground Sea, and Opposition Agent now resolves. Drake now controls Elder during Whirly Tutor's resolution. He gets to see Elder's hand and he tutors for the Archmage Newt. which would hopefully help him get to his spear into the abyss again. Elder gets to his turn and taps, and the Rumor and the ring both trigger. He lets the ring resolve first, taking 2 damage, and then activates it in response to draw 3 cards, so he can have a better idea of his plans before deciding for his Remora. He does end up paying 1 mana for it, and proceeds to his draw step. He now plays a command tower and brings out his commander, Felix 5 Boots, feeling it's time to force Josh's Deluge. He then goes to combat and swings at Drake. The Spectre triggers twice and exiles Mana Crypt and Dark Ritual. With the Deluge incoming, he casts the Mana Crypt and follows it with Amarthis, X = 1, so at least he will have a manifest creature. Elder passes and we're back to Drake. Having noticed Elder refuel his hand and committing to the board with his commander, he hopes that he has counter magic for the Deluge, so he casts Archmage Newt and passes the turn. Josh untaps and is once again safe from the crypt. He now casts a Gitaxian Probe targeting Elder. Remor triggers and he draws. He sees the coast is clear of counter magic, so the moment to cast Deluge is now or never. He ponders recovery options from each player, and Ball would be delayed on Rakdos bringing value. Drake would have plenty of mana for Vraska and walk the top decks. The problem would be Elder with the One Ring, but since he has no way to prevent the Mind Slicer, he hopes Ball goes for Rakdos instead, without mana for the Slicer, allowing them a turn cycle. The Deluge is cast, paying 5 life to clear the board. Remor triggers and Elder draws. In response, Bal sacrifices the Dual Caster Mage to the altar for red mana, triggering Rakdos, targeting himself and triggering Vraska. Drake does pay 1 to get the Dual Caster Mage come into play as a treasure under his control, so it prevents him from going for a reanimation into Twin Flame shenanigans. The treasure comes into play untapped due to the Amulet of Vigor, so it's also free. Drake decides not to copy the Deluge with the trigger, and now Bal exiles the top 3 cards of his library. Deluge now resolves, and while Vraska triggers for all creatures still, Drake decides not to get anything else, as it would bring some of the treasured creatures back to Bal's graveyard. Elder gets to manifest the top card thanks to Amarthis, and Josh passes with some interaction up. Bal untaps and pays 4 life to the Sylvan library. He starts with a Dark Ritual, Remor triggers and Elder draws, but passes priority. Josh ponders interacting, but Bal would still be able to cast Mind Slicer, and maybe he's just going for Rakdos, so he lets it resolve. With the floating black mana, Bal puts the Mind Slicer on the stack, avoiding a possible Mind Break trap from Elder, and it does resolve. Bal now plays Takenuma Abandoned Mire, and follows it with Lion's Eye Diamond, his 3rd spell. Remor triggers, Elder draws, but passes priority, and so does everyone else. Josh and Drake are trying to convince Bal not to crack the Mind Slicer, because Elder will recoup a hell lot faster due to the One Ring. However, Bal has something else in his mind, so he does sacrifice Mind Slicer to Phyrexian Altar for 1 black mana, triggering it. Elder passes, so does Drake, and Josh fires a Born Upon the Wind, triggering the fish but not paying. However, Elder declines the draw, since he will discard a drawn card. Josh draws from the Born and then recasts his commander, Satoru the Infiltrator. The Mind Slicer trigger now resolves and everyone discards their hands. While Drake had Force of Vigor online, he felt like not removing Bal completely out of the game, destroying his Sylvan library, since Bal would be the person with the most card advantage to prevent Elder from going off, so this way there would be 2 strong opponents having to deal with each other. Now, with the floating mana, Bal recasts his commander, Rakdos the Muscle. He then casts Master of Dark Rites from the exile and sacrifices it to Phyrexian Altar for 1 black mana. This triggers Rakdos the Muscle and he targets Elder, committing a crime. And triggering Forsaken Miner, he uses the black mana to pay for the trigger and return it to play. This way, he demonstrates a loop where he sacrifices Forsaken Miner to Phyrexian Altar for black mana, triggering Rakdos and targeting an opponent. By doing so, he is committing a crime, triggering Forsaken Miner and paying that 1 black mana to return it to play. He is able to exile his opponent's libraries completely and either cast fast mana into Thassa's Oracle or just pass the turn and see his opponents lose when they attempt to draw from an empty library. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. If you would like to play with us, like Drake, check out our Patreon below. Speaking of which, we'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, Anajimo, Dragon House Cat, Pina, Ricardo, Katerina and Zinan, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing or by becoming a patron yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment below, it greatly helps the channel. You can also take a look at one of these videos here.